All right. So we are going to discuss the muscular system. We talked about it a little bit in the beginning of the semester, and we got a brief idea about these different things, different muscles, including skeletal muscles, smooth muscles, and cardiac muscles. We will be talking about different things, including concepts like origin, insertion, agonist, antagonist, fast and slow switches. These are the main points that are actually very important. Besides the role of the muscles on homeostasis, we talked about that already when we discussed the homeostasis. We will also have some details about how the muscles contract, including what is the contractile unit of the muscle, which is called sarcomere, um, and some details, including how the nerve motor neurons go to the muscles and they form motor units, something called motor units. We will discuss all of that. So let's start with the skeletal muscles. Obviously, from the name, skeletal muscles means attached to the skeleton. So, like your biceps right here, your triceps in the back, the muscles that are attached to the bone, most of them are called skeletal muscles. And you guys should remember that these muscles are voluntary. So I decided to contract my biceps. I decided to relax my biceps. It's voluntary. Unlike the cardiac muscles in the heart, you have no control over it. Try it, you won't be able to do it. Can you slow down your heart? Can you speed up your heart? Contract, relax? Of course not. Same thing for the smooth muscles. But let me remind you that the smooth muscles always go by exclusion. So always ask yourself, if I ask you about any muscle, what kind of muscle is that? The simple question is that muscle attached to my skeleton? It's voluntary? If no, second question, is it in the heart? If no, that's it. Anything else is smooth muscles. You don't have to memorize them one by one. Just get it by exclusion. Not voluntary attached to the skeleton, not in the heart. That's it. There are certain characteristics that you actually need to know about the skeletal muscles, beside the fact that it is voluntary. What we need to know here is that the muscle fiber, what's a muscle fiber? The muscle fiber is a muscle cell, but we call it fiber. Muscle cell, the single muscle that together will make the muscle tissue, is long, very long and thin. That's one. The other thing is it is multi-nucleated. Multi means multiple. Nucleated nuclei. It contains many nuclei. You need to know these basics, criteria about each one of these muscles. Voluntary, long and thin. It's called muscle fiber. Multinucleated. Why is it multinucleated? Why only this one that have several nuclei? And also why it is big? Because it comes from confusion of group of cells. I will talk about it. The other thing is also it's striated. Striated is coming from stria, and I talked about that before. Stria, like layer after layer after layer after layer, like these parallel lines, striation. So look at this picture right here. This is different than this one right here. This one, look how this line parallel to this, parallel to this, parallel to this. So this is one muscle fiber. Look, nuclei, here is, you see the purple here, 1, 2, 3, 4, because it came from confusion. Merging of different cells. The origin come from different cells merged together to make this big cell. And each one of those who merged together used to have their own nuclei. Now it is multinucleated. You have to know this. Compared to the cardiac muscles and smooth muscles, cardiac muscles, obviously, it's only in the heart and it is involuntary. These are basics. but it is also striated. It is also striated, but this striation is a little bit different. Look at this, like it goes like this, parallel to this, but it branches. So is it striated like the skeletal muscles, like these striated here? Yes, but this is striated and branching. This is important. Striated and branching. One more thing that is very, very important, and this is something unique that you need to know, which is it contains something called intercalated discs. Intercalated discs. This is unique. And because it's unique, you have to remember it. What's intercalated discs? All these muscle fibers, there is a disc connecting them together so that when the electrical signal come, the whole heart, or at least the whole chamber, contract as one unit. You cannot contract this piece of the heart and the other piece is not contracting. That doesn't work. You have to contract, pushing out the blood, the whole unit, and then relax to receive blood. And then you contract again, pushing out the blood and so on. Contract, relax. Unit as one unit. You can't do like this is contracting and this is relaxing. No, you can't do it this way. It has to be a single unit thanks to the intercalated discs doing that for us. But it is single nucleated. The only one that's multinucleated was the skeletal muscles for a reason. This is the only one that come from merging of a group of cells. Otherwise, cardiac cells and smooth cells, these are just individual cells. This is their origin and this is what it is. So this is a main difference. Smooth muscles. With the smooth muscles, exclusion, not in the heart, not attached to the skeleton. So is it in blood vessels? Yes. In the digestive system, yes. Urinary system, yes. Reproductive system, yes. Blood vessels, yes. Urinary bladder, yes. Anything else? Yes, yes. It is everywhere else. And obviously, it's involuntary because the only one that's voluntary is the skeletal muscle. If you see here, there is no striation. It's just random. It's not striated. Look, this is going this way, this is going straight, and this is going like up. They are not striated. No parallel stria, no parallel layers. It is not. It's random. So it is not striated. How many nuclei? As you see the purple here, it's one. One more time, the only one that's multinucleated and the only one that's voluntary is the skeletal muscles. So here it is. What are the three types of muscles? Obviously, skeletal, smooth, and cardiac. Which one, which muscle is the one that partner with the skeleton to move the body parts? The name gave it away. It's the skeleton. Skeleton. Which muscle in the different organs, such as blood vessels? This is smooth. Which one in the heart? Cardiac muscles, obviously. So the muscles are going to contract, and by contracting means it becomes shorter. And when it does that, it's going to create force, generate force, to do something. What is that something? It depends. Which muscle are you talking about? All of them contract. In the heart, yes, it contracts to push out the blood and then relax to receive the blood. Skeletal muscles, yes, it contracts to move your different parts of your body, skeleton part, the skeletal system, and it relax. Same thing for the smooth muscles. So you contract, generating force, and then you relax. When you contract, the muscles become shorter. And when you relax, it go back to its initial length. Look at my biceps here. This is the length. When I contract, it is shorter. Relax, longer, and so on. If you look at one of these muscles, let's say this is biceps. Let's get into some more details. So if you have this whole entire muscle, it's covered by a sheath of connective tissue. But if you look inside, you will see it bundles. If you like to eat meat, whatever, red meat or chicken or whatever, sometimes we just eat it as it is. Sometimes we can like separate them like this. You're separating these bundles, and each bundle, this is a bundle right here. Each bundle is also surrounded by connective tissue. If you go inside the bundle, you will see muscle fibers, which is a muscle cell, inside of which we have myofibril, inside of which we will have filaments. You need to know that arrangement one more time. This is the whole entire muscle. This is your biceps, the whole muscle covered by connective tissue. What are the units inside? These units are called bundles. Bundles, surrounded by connective tissue as well to separate from the other bundles. If you go inside one of the bundles, what should I see? Muscle fibers or muscle cells. This is your unit. And then if I go further, I will see fibril, and inside the fibril, there will be filaments. So the whole muscle, bundles, muscle cells or fibers, fibrils, filaments. The skeletal muscles that we are talking about is very thin and very long. If the skeletal muscle is as thin as this pencil, it will be as long as a football field. This is how huge it is. But it's bundled to beside each other, which is not happening. So it's all of it is within the muscle itself. The muscles, like this muscle right here, this is called the quadriceps muscle. There is a tendon that attach that muscle to the bone. So what's it? We talked about this in the previous chapter. What's a tendon? Attachment of muscle to bone. If you remember, what is the attachment of bone to bone? Ligament, muscle to bone, tendon, basics. These are basics. Each one of these muscles will have something called origin and insertion. Skeletal muscles, we have more than 600. I want you to remember this number. A little bit over 600, 602 or something like that, but it's above 600 anyway. And each muscle will have two ends. One more time, look at my biceps right here. This is my biceps, and here is one end at my elbow, and the other end is at the shoulder. So any muscle will have two ends. If I contract, look at this. If you can see that in the camera, look at this. This is my biceps. This is one end at the shoulder, and the other end is at the elbow. When I contract, the one end at the elbow is the one that change, the one that moves, not this one, not the one in the shoulder. What's the importance of that? Very important basics to know that this one end that doesn't move is called origin. The other end that move, and it will end up moving one of these joints, we call that insertion. So origin is one end that attached to the bone and does not move. It can move a little bit, but it's almost not moving. Insertion is the one that actually move, and this is the one that make the main contraction. Look at this picture right here that I just talked about. This is the biceps in the front, and this is the triceps in the back. Here is the origin. This is one end is the origin. The other end is the insertion. How did I know? This is a muscle that has two ends. Yes, try it. If you try it, you will notice that this end doesn't move and this end move. And that's why when you contract the biceps, your elbow is flexed. This is called flexion, and this is called extension. Flex means make the angle smaller. Look at the angle of my elbow. This is like 180, and then you bend. This is called flexion. Let's say 150, 120, 90, 70, 60, 30, and so on. So you're going, the angle is getting smaller angle. This is called flexion, flex. When you do the opposite, it's called extension, like this. I'm straightening, flexion, extension. You will see it. How about the triceps? Same thing. This is the origin and this is the insertion. How did you know? Try your triceps here. Which end move? The one that at the elbow. So the end at the elbow is the insertion, the one that moves. And the other one is the origin. Here it is. One more thing that's important here. When I say important, it is important. Remember this. Basics. I'm talking about the basics. There will be some details not as important, but these are the basics. You have to know that this is the origin, this is the insertion, the different parts, muscle, bundle, fiber, fibril, filament. These are the basics that I'm focusing on. But here is one more thing that we need to know. When you do contract one of your muscles, there is an opposing muscle. Like this, look at this. This is my biceps. I'm going to contract my biceps like this. Contract, contract. If you didn't notice, the opposite muscle, which is the triceps in the back of my arm, is relaxing. Can I contract both of them? If you contract both of them, there is no movement. In order to allow the biceps to contract, the opposing muscle, called the antagonist, need to relax. Contract one, relax the other one. How about, can I do the opposite? Yes, look at this. This is my triceps. I'm going to contract. Biceps is relaxing. So there is one muscle that's doing the function, the contraction. The opposing one is called antagonist, and this is the one that's doing the opposite action. So when I contract one muscle, I relax the antagonist. When I contract one, I will relax the other antagonist. So this is how it works. This is one. So the main muscle, and there is antagonist to that muscle, opposing. But there is also another type of muscle that's called the helper. This is the biceps. There is another muscle underneath that's helping the biceps. So this one, in this case scenario, the biceps here is called the prime mover, the main one. The one that's underneath, brachialis, for example, is helping the biceps, supporting the biceps. We call it synergist. And the one that's doing the opposite is called antagonist. You have to know it. Prime mover, the main one. Synergist, helper, synergy. When you say synergy, meaning support, help. An antagonist is the opposite. Prime mover, synergist, antagonists. Here is the synergist, a muscle that contracts to add force or help stabilize another muscle. So it's basically supporter, helper. It contracts to add force, like this. When I contract, I'm adding force. It's not only the biceps, there is brachialis underneath that's adding force. In some cases, it will stabilize another muscle for me so that I can contract. So these are the three terms that you have to know. Now, if I look at the muscle fibers, which is the muscle cells, remember I told you the whole muscle is a group of bundles separated by connective tissue. Each bundle contains muscle fibers. Each fiber contains fibril, and in the fibril we have filaments. Muscle, bundle, fiber or cell, fibril, filament. I'm talking about the fibers now, which is the cell. There are different types that you have to know. Different types of muscle fibers. Some of them are called slow twitching fibers. Slow twitching. Slow twitching means it is slowly contracting. It is slow to contract. And the easy example of that is the dark meat. If you eat meat, that's some of the meat is dark, some of the meat is white. Um, I'll give you example. Some of us like the chicken breast, and others like the chicken thigh. Did you notice that the chicken breast is white and the chicken thigh is red or dark? So slow twitch is the dark meat. This is like the chicken thigh in the chicken. And the reason why it is dark, but it is the slow ones, because it contains a lot of something called myoglobin, a lot of mitochondria, a lot of capillaries. And it work with aerobic. What's aerobic? Aerobic is when you do activities that enable you. It is slow. You do light activities. We call it aerobics. Like, you know, if you played aerobics before, it's not something strenuous. Something like this. You go like this and like this, and you bend and you unbend, and these simple movements, we call that aerobic because it's not very fast, it's not intense. So you have the time to breathe and get enough oxygen. And this is where the name aerobic, which is coming from air, which mean oxygen. So aerobic, you have enough oxygen to burn your nutrients and give energy to your muscles. And because of that, because you're going slowly and it is aerobic, so you can have steady power, not just something that you like lift and get tired. And there is endurance, sustained contraction, slow, sustained. It it's slow, yes, that's not very good, but it is sustained, meaning I can't do that aerobic for an hour. I can do that. Sustained contraction. I can carry something that's light and keep it for half an hour. Sustained. Slow. Dark. Why is it dark? A lot of myoglobin and mitochondria and a lot of capillaries. It's aerobic. What's a myoglobin? I think we all know the hemoglobin in the blood. Hemoglobin is what carry oxygen. Myoglobin is another version in the muscle. Myoglobin, kind of similar to hemoglobin. Myoglobin, hemoglobin. Myoglobin, hemoglobin. It's doing the same function. It is just extra storage of oxygen in the muscles because we don't know if you always have enough oxygen or not. So we're making sure that you get enough. So it's myoglobin. This slide is very, very important. You have to know all these details about the fibers. On the other hand, the one that's fast, twitch, it's fast to fatigue. Fast to twitch, fast to fatigue. Slow to twitch, slow to fatigue. So sustained contraction, endurance, steady power, slow. The fast ones, it work fast, but you get tired fast. Fast to contract, fast to get tired. And it is white in color, like the chicken breast. There are subtypes of this type 2 that it's called 2A and 2B. These are subtypes, but we're not going into the details. But remember, this is anaerobic. What do you mean anaerobic? An, I told you that from the beginning, prefixes. An, in, m, an, I am, a, all of these means no. It doesn't literally means no. Anaerobic means no air, which means no oxygen, but not literal. It means less oxygen. Like if you're like doing like this movement right here, or you're like working on a treadmill and you're going fast. You're going fast. Remember, fast fibers. Now you don't have enough time to get enough oxygen. So we call it anaerobic. And if that's the case, if you're not getting enough oxygen, you will do anaerobic metabolism. I hope you guys still remember that. Remember when I told you the glucose get into the cells and then you do glycolysis, which is anaerobic. And then if you have enough oxygen, you go to the mitochondria and you do tricarboxylic acid cycle and electron transport chain. So this part is aerobic. So this is anaerobic basically. It gives you fast, strong power, fast to contract, strong power, but fast to fatigue, not endurance, not sustained. If you see people like lifting weights like this, once they lift it, they wait like a second and then they have to drop it. They can't stay like this because the fast muscles that they are using in this case are fast to contract, but fast to fatigue. Fast to contract, fast to fatigue. There is not as much endurance. You cannot sustain it. It's fast to contract, fast to fatigue. And obviously it's white because it has less myoglobin and less mitochondria. So type A is the slow, like you're walking. Type 2 is fast. It's type B, uh, type 2B, I mean, which is fast, but it's not extremely fast. 2A is the one that's extremely fast, like you're running really, really fast. So skeletal muscles consist of uh, bundles, cells bundles together by, what is this? This is connective tissue, obviously. Tendon attached skeletal muscles to bone. Remember the ligament, bone to bone, tendon, muscle to bone. Skeletal muscles contract, they pull into what? On what? Obviously the bone. It's called skeletal. Skeleton means bone. Uh, when the muscles are working, there is another one that do reverse. What do you call it? Antagonist. And how about the one that help, assist, stabilize, synergist, basics? Don't forget it. The main muscle, prime mover. The opposing one is antagonist. The helper, the one that assists and stabilize, synergist. Which fibers are red and long lasting? Obviously slow, because they are slow to contract, slow to fatigue, it can sustain, and it is red, capillaries and myoglobin. Which ones is white in color, meaning it has less myoglobin and capillaries, and give you a strong burst of contraction, rapid, fast. It's fast fibers. One more time, you have the entire muscle containing bundles surrounded by connective tissue. If I look inside the bundle, I see the muscle fiber, which is what we just talked about. Inside the fiber, there are fibrils. And this is the fibril. Here it is. It's getting, we are looking at it in a bigger picture. This is the whole thing is a fibril. And these are filaments, filament and filament. This is a filament and this is a filament. I mentioned it several times to help you remember. Muscle, bundles, fibers, fibrils, filaments. This is a filament. This is a filament. Filaments together is fibril. Fibrils together, fiber or cell. Fibers or cells together, bundle. Bundles together, entire muscle. I did it both ways. And the filaments here, so we're going to the deepest, the smallest, are these filaments. There are different types of filaments, but the most important and the main ones that you have to know, again, I'm focusing on the core, the basics. These two types that are called actin and myosin. Actin and myosin. These are the two filaments, the main ones, that slide on each other like this and will make the contraction. Here is a picture again. Here it is. This is the skeletal muscle. Look how striated it is. Stria, 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 stria. And you look, if you look inside, it's a fiber. It's contain fibers, and inside the fibers you have fibrils. Now, if we look at one of these fibrils, muscle, bundle, fiber. Now I'm looking inside the fibrils that contain filaments. It is very important to remember that the sarcomere is a functional unit of contraction that you can see under the microscope. What is a functional unit? Like the one unit that contracts, and another unit contract, and another unit contract. Together, the whole muscle is contracting. But what is the unit? You have to remember this. It's called sarcomere. Sarcomere. What's the contractile unit of the skeletal muscle? Sarcomere. You have to remember that. So this sarcomere contract, and this one contract, and this one contract. Together, it will make the muscle shorter, which is contraction. How many sarcomeres do we have? Hundreds of thousands, maybe 100,000 or something like this. So this is a fibril. Contractile unit is sarcomere. So since this is a fibril, inside of which we have filaments, and I talked about it, the thick one is called myosin, and the thin one is called actin. Look at this sarcomere. The sarcomere starts from this line that's called Z to the next Z line. From Z to Z. Contractile unit called sarcomere. Here is the actin, which is the thin, and this is the myosin, which is the thick. So if you look at this picture here under the microscope, it will look like this. So obviously, the pink ones are thicker, myosin, and the blue ones are thinner, actin. If you forgot which one is thin and which one is thick, myosin is 6 letters thicker. Actin is 5 letters, so it's less letters, thinner. Something just to help you remember. So the sliding here will happen like this. From yellow to yellow, Z to Z. What is this here? This is a sarcomere, which is the same here. It is normally like this when it's relaxed, but look at the pink, which is the thick, which is the myosin, and look at the blue, which is the thin, which is the actin. They are going to slide against each other so that the sarcomere becomes shorter like this. Look at it, look in the camera here. Let's say actin, myosin, actin, myosin, actin, myosin. They are like in that arrangement, alternate like this. Look at the sliding and how this distance will be shorter. It goes like this. It was long like this, and when you slide, they slide on each other, it becomes shorter. When all the sarcomeres become shorter, the whole muscle becomes shorter. So here it is again. This is myosin, thicker. This is actin, thinner. When they slide against each other, the sarcomere contracts. Just understand that the thick will have these extensions, and these extensions have head and tail, and this is how they interact and slide. This is how the thick interact and slide with the thin. Look at these heads. This is what interact with the thin ones. However, if you ask yourself, like, if these heads of the thick are trying to are attaching to the thin and these slide, why are we? How can we relax them? Like normally, if you're like laying down like this, you're relaxing. Why the heads are not attaching? The head of the myosin not attaching to the actin to initiate the contraction to slide. Why? Because the active side of the actin, look at the blue. This is the actin. The active side is actually covered temporarily by something called troponin and tropomyosin. When you push it away, you are going to expose the active sites and contraction will occur. Here it is. This is troponin and tropomyosin covering the active site. I want to contract. Move the tropomyosin, this, which is going to move the troponin that was covering the active site. So now the heads will find the active sites not covered. It's going to interact with it, making the contraction. And after the contraction, you're going to relax. How? The tropomyosin will put troponin again back to cover the active sites. So contraction ended. This is relaxation. In order to do that, what I just mentioned, which is troponin pushing away, tropomyosin, I mean, pushing away troponin away from the active sites. How? Calcium. Remember when we talked about calcium in the skeleton and you have to have calcium to contract? This is the job of the calcium. It activates tropomyosin to move the troponin away from the active sites. What if I don't have calcium? Tropomyosin will not move away troponin from the active sites. So the heads of the myosin cannot interact with the active sites of actin. No contraction. That's it. There is a condition called, or something called rigor mortis. Rigor means sustained contraction or stiffness. Mortis, mortal, means death. Right after death, the muscles are going to contract and does not relax. Like throughout our entire life, as long as we are alive. You contract, relax, contract, relax, contract, relax. There is no like continuous contraction, sustained contraction doesn't happen. But right after death, this rigor mortis will come and it is going to contract and stay contracting for some time, but then it's going to, like, the muscles are going to dissolve and break down and stuff. But I'm talking about right after death. And that explains, if you ever see this, when somebody dies, they usually close their mouth. Because if rigor mortis came while the mouth is opened, you cannot close it until the muscles start to break down and stuff. But I'm talking about the beginning. So this is called rigor mortis. How rigor mortis, what's the explanation of that, which is important to know? ATP is not produced anymore. If you don't have ATP, this is the energy that was helping this situation that we talked about of sliding. It does not happen without ATP. So in the case, the muscles are locked up temporarily. And that will stay from 1 up to 2.5 or maybe 3 days, and then the muscle will decompose, and this will go away. But this is something that is um, that will happen to every single person when they die. The first 1, 2, or 3 days, they will have this rigor mortis because no ATP, so the muscles go to lock up temporarily. Skeletal muscles contract when it's what shorten. It's contractile unit shorten. What's a contractile unit? Sarcomere. Very important. And the sarcomere is obviously the basic unit of the muscle. What are the two filaments, thin and thick, that they are going to slide against each other? Myosin and actin. Myosin or actin. Which one is the thin? We have myosin and actin. Which one is thin? Actin. I forgot it. Yeah, this is 5 letters and this is 6 letters. Even if you forgot it. Actin is thin, 5 letters. How about the thick? Myosin, 6 letters. What are the other two filaments? Troponin and tropomyosin. And this is just to uncover active sites of myosin and then recover in the presence of calcium. So powered by what power this process? ATP, energy. Myosin interact with actin, these filaments, and the muscle contracts, the sarcomere becomes shorter. Myosin heads attached to the myosin binding sites or the active sites of actin when calcium is released. And the protein is going to change, of course, its shape. And the muscle lock up is rigor mortis. And it's because of what that you need to know, ATP, no longer produced. Now, still skeletal muscles. These skeletal muscles, remember, it is voluntary, right? These are the only ones that are voluntary. Now, I decided to contract my muscle, my biceps. I decided, it's voluntary. But what goes from my brain when I decided to the muscle? A neuron, a nerve, a neuron. It's called the motor neuron. Why did you call it motor neuron? Because it's the one that will cause the muscles to contract, and this is a motor thing. Contraction is motor. So motor neuron will take my order. I decided to contract. This is an order. The motor neuron will take it and go all the way to the muscles, telling them to contract. Those two together, the motor neuron and this part of the muscle, together, this is called the motor unit. The motor unit. This is how the neuron look like. Body containing nucleus, branches called dendrites, and then a long axon. At the end, it branches to go to these muscle fibers. And when it go to the muscle fibers, it will make calcium release, and this calcium will activate tropomyosin to remove troponin from the active sites so that contraction occurs. I'm not expecting any pictures of these. This is kind of too much. I give you the core of the chapter already. I just want you to know what is this unit together with the two different parts. This is the end of the neuron. It expands like this. And this is the beginning of the muscle fiber. So they come together. The nerve goes all the way and then stop. But it stopped already. Does it touch the muscles to give them the order to contract? No, it does not. There is a space. So if that's the case, you need to release something called neurotransmitter to cross the gap, go to the muscles, and tell them to contract. This transmitter is called acetylcholine neurotransmitter, acetylcholine. So remember this again, this is the end of the motor neuron, and this is the beginning of the muscle. The end of the neuron expand like this, and it does not touch the muscles. So there is a junction here called neuromuscular junction or synapse. What's neuromuscular junction? A junction, a space, a gap between the end of the neuron, neuro, and the beginning of the muscle, muscular, neuromuscular junction. This is not the most important thing. It's just if you are interested to know what's the Botox that's been used. It's something that blocks the release of acetylcholine that we talked about. You get it from bacteria that's called Clostridium botulinum. Uh, Relax the muscles so it avoids wrinkling. That's only if you're interested to know how does it work. So the nerve impulse, when it comes to the muscles, what's going to be released? Calcium. From what? From something called sarcoplasmic reticulum. Calcium released from something called sarcoplasmic reticulum. Let me show you this. This is the end of the neuron, and this is the beginning of the muscle. There is a neuromuscular junction right here between the end of the neuron and the beginning of the muscles. Acetylcholine will move and the signal go to the muscles. This sarcoplasmic reticulum is going to release calcium, and the rest is what I talked about. Calcium, activate tropomyosin, moving away troponin from the active sites of actin so that the heads of myosin interact with the active sites of actin, sliding contraction. So it's calcium. The nerve impulse passed from the neuron to the muscle. We call that what? Neuromuscular junction or synapse. Important. Neuromuscular. Neuron and muscle. This is where the neuron or the nerve go to the muscle, and there is a junction in between or synapse. What's the name of that neurotransmitter that leave the neuron and go to the muscles to give them the signal? Acetylcholine. Acetylcholine. Now, if you guys noticed, if let's say I'm going to carry something that's lightweight, okay? I'm going to carry my cell phone or something. I don't need to use all these muscle fibers. This is waste, right? Like if I have, let's say I have 10 trucks, and I can use all the 10 trucks to deliver my, let's say, TVs, for example. And I got an order for 3 TVs. Should I move all my trucks? Of course not. I'm going to utilize only 3 trucks, give them the 3 units, TVs, to deliver them to the customers. And I'm not going to use the other 7. I will make them relax. You don't have to go for no reason. The muscles are doing the same. We do not use 100% of our muscles, fibers. We don't use 100% of the fibers. It all depends on how much force do I need. Am I carrying a cell phone? Am I carrying a laptop? Am I carrying like a big chair or something? So in each one of those, cell phone, I need few. laptop, I need more muscle fibers to be involved. And if I'm carrying like a big table or a big chair, I almost need all my muscles. So it all depends on the amount of force that you need. So this will bring us to a very important concept or a name that's called motor unit. Motor unit. Very important concept. What's a motor unit? One motor neuron, a nerve, it doesn't only go to one fiber, it goes to multiple fibers. Together, the one neuron and these fibers that this neuron branches and go to, we call that motor unit. Basics you have to remember. What's a motor unit? Is it the nerve alone? No. The neuron alone? No. Is it the muscle fiber alone? No. It is this one neuron, and those fibers belong to that neuron. The neuron at the end, look at this, how it's branching. It goes to this one and this one. So this neuron and this fiber and this fibers together, we call that motor unit. Look at motor unit 1 here. This is one neuron, and it branches to 1, 2, 3. So 3 muscle fibers plus this one neuron together, this is motor neuron. So we have motor neuron 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 50, whatever it is, the units. Which ones am I going to use? Should I use motor unit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 alone? Yes, you can if you're doing a very weak contraction and you don't need much force. If you need more, you can recruit half of your units from your, let's say it's not like that. I'm just giving you example. But let's say all the motor units that I have are hundreds. So if you're carrying something, your pencil or something, maybe you need 5 or 10 units. If I'm carrying my cell phone, maybe I need like 20. Laptop, maybe 30, 40. If I'm using like carrying a table or something, I can use like 80 out of the 100. The maximum that you can get is when you utilize all of them, 100%, all motor units. And that explains the weightlifters, they can carry a weight and they can do more and more. And at certain point, they give them like, can you carry this? This is 400 pounds. Barely. Okay, how about 450? No, I cannot. I cannot. Because when you carry the 400 pounds, you utilize 100% of your units. This is the maximum force that you can get. Usually, we don't utilize 100%. You utilize as much as you need. You're going to recruit as much as you need. So now how I control my muscles. I need more force. Recruit or utilize more motor units. I'm doing slighter like a lighter job. Okay, recruit or utilize less motor units, and so on. Now there is a term that's called muscle tone. The muscle tone is partial, steady, partial, steady contraction. Even if the muscle in a passive or relaxing state. What do you mean? Here is what I mean. If I'm sitting down, I'm not actively contracting anything. But when I'm sitting down, I'm not going to fall, right? I can sit down. So there is a little bit of a minimal contraction that's keeping my posture and stabilizing my joints. It's not active contraction. I'm not carrying something. I'm not doing something actively. Just a slight contraction, slight continuous contraction, just enough to keep my posture. Like if I'm sitting down, I'm not going to drop. I'm not going to lay flat. If I'm like bending my knee, the knee will stay bending because of slight contraction. What's the organization of the muscle fibers organized into what? Motor units. And this what give us the ability to do light job or moderate job or heavy job. It's motor units. The motor unit consists of what? Motor neuron and the muscle fibers, not fiber, fibers, 2, 3, 10, whatever it is. Uh, the what of the motor units in muscle correlate with how precisely the nervous system must control. How do you control it? By controlling the number of motor units. You should remember that. Muscle what is a steady state, low contraction to help maintain our posture. It is obviously the muscle tone. Okay. Uh, the one more thing that I want you to know here is um, the same as we did in the bone. Remember in the bone, I told you we don't need any details, just name the individual bones. Here, I want you to know these individual muscles, okay? Like this is pectoralis muscle, biceps in the front of your arm, triceps in the back of your arm. Are you going to see a picture? Maybe, maybe yes, or maybe it's by description. What do I mean by description? Like, can I show you a picture like this and give you an arrow A, B, C, D, and ask you? Yes. Is there is another way? Yes. I can ask you which of the following muscles is in the arm, for example, and I say like biceps, pectoralis, external oblique, sartorius, quadriceps. Which one? You have to know it's biceps. So I can ask you by component, by component. Muscles of the arm, biceps in the front, which is this, and triceps in the back. Here is the biceps in the front, and this is the triceps in the back. This muscle here that rotate, help you rotate, right here, you can feel it right here. It's right here. This is called sternocleidomastoid. This one here is called pectoralis. The muscle that's called six packs. This is just a common name, but the anatomical name is rectus abdominis, under which you have two muscles that are going obliquely, external oblique, internal oblique. Here you have the largest muscle in the front of the thigh here. It's called quadriceps femoris. What ceps means? You're saying biceps, triceps, quadriceps. Bi is 2, tri is 3, quad is 4. 2 heads, 3 heads, 4 heads. It all depends on, does the muscle have 2 heads, 3 heads, 4 heads? Bi, tri, quad. Biceps, triceps, quadriceps. What if the muscle has only 1 head? We don't call it anything. Just, you call it just a muscle. Like this muscle here of the shoulder, deltoid. Is it biceps deltoid? No, no, no. If it has 1 head, we don't even mention it. Deltoid. This huge muscle of the back here is called trapezius. This muscle here is called latissimus dorsi. The buttocks muscle is called gluteus maximus. The muscle in the front, I told you it's called this quadriceps, the main bulk in the front of your thigh. How about in the back? Biceps femoris. How about here in the back of your leg? In the back is gastrocnemius. In the front is called tibialis anterior. Remember the tibia that we talked about? This big bone here? This is anterior to it. Tibialis anterior. Gastrocnemius. Like one more time, you can either see a picture or a description. So you have to know these muscles. Okay, I can ask you which of those is the muscle of the shoulder? Which of the following is the muscle of the back? Which of the following is the muscle of the back of the thigh or the front of the thigh? Back of the leg, front of the leg. the front of your arm, the back of your arm, the abdomen, rectus abdominis, abdomen, in the abdomen, external oblique, internal oblique, and so on. With aging, generally speaking, everything deteriorates. With aging, everything deteriorates. You name it. It goes without saying. Muscles, weak. How about the size? Smaller. Bone, weak. Size, less. Porous, small, weak. It's all less, down, goes down. Muscle strength, less. Muscle size, less, and so on. So when you say something like sarcopenia, sarco means muscle, and penia means weak. Sarcopenia, the muscles become weak. Both strength and force, this is one, plus the mass. If you notice older people, their muscles are not as big and as strong as younger people. One more thing that I talked about is the myoglobin. And the myoglobin is a carrier for oxygen, extra storage of oxygen. Aging starts from the age 40. Do you remember that in the bone? I told you guys in the bone starts. It doesn't mean it is weak already, or it is like osteoporosis. I didn't say that. I said starting from 40, your bone start to deteriorate and become weaker. Same for the muscles, same age, so 40. Um, Another term that's called creatinine phosphate, and this creatinine phosphate is extra storage of energy. Myoglobin, extra storage of oxygen. Creatinine phosphate, extra storage of ATP, because you do need the muscles to contract like all the time. You need the muscles to contract. So you need a lot of ATP and oxygen all the time. That's why you have you should have extras in that form. Sarcopenia, penia means weak. Look how the muscle, the diameter is big, it shrinks. At 40, start to shrink. At 80, it's even more. Um, if you wanted to maintain your muscle strength, what should you do? You should exercise. What type of exercise? Aerobic is more important. Okay, so if you wanted to maintain the muscle, aerobic exercise. Uh, if you wanted to make it stronger, not just to maintain it, you can do like uh, carrying weight and stuff like that. So it is continuous exercise is always good and always needed. Um, it's the same thing here. I talked about these muscles, and I do want you to know these muscles, whether I will give you a picture or a description or both of them. I don't know which question you're going to see from the bank, but you will be asked about these names. So I do want you to know them both in the picture and from the description. And that's it. Here is what we talked about already. It's been summarized here. So let me stop sharing and stop